What's up, everyone? Back for another edition of the LG Locks podcast. Larry and Grayson finally back together. We've taken about 2 weeks off. We had the 1 week where you were on bachelor weekend and gone, and then another week where you were here visiting, and we just went out and threw up a TikTok real fast together. So it's good to be back. Actually getting to do a little bit of research. And a lot better than what we were doing before. But a little updated records for college. I don't have the update for the NFL yet, but for college, I'm sitting at 12-7-1 since I have the extra week. I have a couple more games than you, and Grayson's sitting at 9-6-1. So I mean, we're both positive. We're both thriving after that really rough first week that we have. But let's get on into it. So first game on the slate, we're going straight to top 15 matchup in Ohio State versus Penn State. What do you think with that, Grayson?
Yeah, I mean it's a team that we haven't really seen in a spot like this yet, going on the road. Unfortunately, who they're playing in Penn State, we saw very recently what happened when they got tested, and it did not go well. Blake Corum ran for almost 300 yards. I think Michigan as a team was well over 400 yards rushing. Ohio State does have a top 20 rushing attack, but obviously they're going to try and spread you out and hurt you through the air with C.J. Stroud. My question really isn't about Ohio State's offense. I think we've seen via the eye test, they're number one in the country if you use that as a metric. They've handled business. We've seen some teams like my Clemson Tigers last week getting some tricky spots. But Ohio State, aside from the opener against Notre Dame, it's been pretty smooth sailing, and I don't think that stops here. I think Week 12 would be the big one that we might see a loss on their side. But, I mean, big number at 15 points. I don't necessarily love going in that direction, but I have no choice to. This Penn State team, since 2016, they have not beaten a top 10 team. Just an indictment on, the hype they build up, and they just can't come through. So I don't know if Jackson Smith and Jigba plays. They were talking an increased pitch count. Now Ryan Day, as of yesterday, didn't want to really offer much of an update at all. So I think James Franklin has built up a fine program at Penn State, but he's about to get steamrolled by a better one on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I look at Penn State's schedule and I just don't see a super quality win. I mean, Minnesota was out there starting quarterback. So I don't think that they've faced an offense that really can put points on the board like Ohio State can. I think when it comes down to it, it's just, I mean, Michigan beat them by 24, and I think Ohio State's offense is far superior to Michigan's offense, even though Michigan has taken the next step with J.J. McCarthy this year. Now their defense is obviously not as good as Michigan's, but it's still very good. It's top 25 in the nation, I'm pretty sure. If not, it's right there at the border. It's not a slouch of a defense. I just don't think Penn State's defense is as good as advertised. I know they kind of held Mo
Ibrahim,
yeah, to like 106 yards, I think. But I mean, when you don't have a starting quarterback and you don't really trust your backup like Minnesota, you're going to key in on the best probably running back in the nation right now. So, like you said, 15 points is a lot, but they just put up 54 on Iowa, and Iowa has one of the best defenses in the nation. So I don't see Penn State scoring that many points, and I don't see them stopping them from scoring that many points in this game.
Right, yeah. I mean, minor note, you mentioned the Minnesota game. That was their whiteout game because they got that night slot. This is at noon, so there'll be full crowd. Students will be there, be loud, but it will be nothing like that viral video against Michigan a couple years ago under the lights, unfortunately. I think this game deserves to be at night in prime time, but Big Ten likes their noon slate kickoffs. The SEC has 3:30. Big Ten has noon, so unfortunately their best game is the earliest. So just a minor note on atmosphere, which I think will still be fine, but obviously not. I mean, it was electric for Minnesota, and it showed. They steamrolled them, so I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, speaking on that, like you would think a top 15 matchup would be a 7 p.m. slot. Like it just feels like it should.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So I mean that noon slot has a huge difference. I mean, obviously, with students. I mean, the atmosphere is still going to be really good anytime Ohio State comes into town. I mean, you're going to get people out, but it's not going to be the same.
No.
But Gonna move on into the next one. Rolling into Morgantown, my hometown. Come on now. TCU's coming in at 7.5 favorites. How you feeling on that, Grayson?
Give me the points. I have been skeptical of this TCU team for a while. They've proven me wrong against great competition, beat Kansas State, beat Oklahoma State. They spotted both of those teams 2 plus both times, and they've benefited from some quarterback injuries on the other side, which they can't control. But you can't deny it has the impact on the game. I think they shut out Oklahoma State in the second half regulation, so that's something. And we just saw Spencer Sanders gutted out a big win against Texas last week. That offense looked much, much better in the second half against TCU. So it's been magical. The Horned Frogs are legit. I think they deserve to be a top 10 team. I just don't know how much further that run can go. And Morgantown this is pretty much their Super Bowl. I don't know what the bowl game numbers look like. It's very, very shaky at the moment, so this might be their game. We just saw them beat a pretty good Baylor team a couple weeks ago. That was a weird short week type situation, but it was a night game in Morgantown, and the crowd shut up and had an impact. Again, this is a noon one, so it's early, but still a dangerous place to play. We've seen, some other teams, USC and Corvallis play on Oregon State, escaped by every definition of that word. I think the TCU offense runs into some trouble early, and Neil Brown maybe can't save his job, but he can at least ensure he coaches out the season, because after Texas Tech, this team needs some sort of good news, and I think that a respectable showing, and at the worst, we come away with the win via the hook. So that's where I'm at there.
Yeah. So as a diehard WVU fan, I'm jumping off the climb of the Neil Brown train. I've given him the benefit of the doubt. And Dana Holgerson left our program in shambles. I mean, we had no recruits here when Neil Brown showed up. So he has worked hard to get people to come here and stuff, but you just haven't seen the results. He is exponentially better at home. So that's the only reason I really question this. But after watching the Texas Tech game, it just seems kind of, to me, and this is probably more of a homer pick, just kind of like the defense gave up. They're tired of, it just kind of looked like they weren't there and ready. And that's the biggest reason I'm going TCU minus 7.5 here. I just don't think we can get the stop at the end of the game to keep it within that touchdown, personally. I do think we might be able to score late and cover, so that's why I was so 50-50 on this one. But our defense is the biggest flaw right now, which has been the strongest part of our team for the 4 years that he's been here. So I just don't see us getting that late stop. So I'll be opposite of you on my own team here, and I'll hope that you're right, honestly. But you spoke on Spencer Sanders, so going to his game now, we got Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Kansas State's has minus 1.5. So what are you thinking with that one?
There's always a game that I circle and I'm back and forth on. I've been wrong about Oklahoma State twice now. They beat Baylor. They beat Texas. I was on the other side in both. And so I've hopefully learned my lesson. Fool me 3 times, we have a problem. So I'm going to be on the side of Spencer Sanders and the Pokes this week on the road against Deuce Vaughn, one of the better running backs in the country. I think that they realize what's in front of them. I mentioned a tough 4-game stretch. I think last time we were on here, they're 2-0, and the game at Kansas next week without Jalen Daniels isn't quite the challenge we thought it once was. Unfortunately, I still think it'll be a good game, but this Oklahoma State team's in the driver's seat destiny-wise in the Big 12. TCU obviously undefeated, so they absolutely have control of, who gets one spot in this Big 12 championship game. No division, so it's just the best 2, and Oklahoma State, if they win out, will at least get the second spot. And, of course, no division, so it doesn't really matter. You just got to be one of the 2 best. And like I mentioned a minute ago, I think TCU's due for some of that luck to fade, and maybe Oklahoma State takes control and they're the 1 seed. But that can't happen if they don't keep picking up wins. This would be a big one on the road at Kansas State. Kansas State did lose to Tulane. That's a 7-1 Tulane team. So, off of name alone, you might raise an eyebrow at that, but that's a very talented Tulane team that was and still maybe nationally ranked. I know they were for a minute. So, yeah, I've been wrong about them twice. I have no choice but to go with Oklahoma State. It's plus 1.5. I'll take it just in case we see some college kickers late. And but I think they do win outright.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I'm going to go Oklahoma State. I think on the Oklahoma State train, I think I've been on their side the 2 times, so hopefully I can continue that little trend. But I'm with you. I mean, they do, to play a little devil's advocate, Oklahoma State has the worst pass defense in the Big 12, but they have the 3rd ranked defense when it comes to 3rd down conversions, like opponent wise. So that's kind of confusing. So, but it shows that they bend and don't break. They step up when plays are needed to be made. So, and on top of that, Kansas State is like 112th, 110th, something like that, in 3rd down conversions on offense. And as you have pointed out, and as everybody knows with football, you have to convert 3rd downs to keep the ball and turn possessions that are field goals into touchdowns to eventually win big games like this. So I just feel like where I was with the WVU not being able to get the stop at the end of the game, I feel like Oklahoma State will be able to get the stop, because this is going to be one of those games with probably whoever has the ball last wins. So I think that they might get that key stop and then go down, kick a field goal, and win the game, or maybe run the clock out. But I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at last week alone, Oklahoma State did get that late stop. They made Quinn Ewers uncomfortable the entire game, got that win, got it out. Kansas State up big on TCU and choked it away and lost. So, I mean, just momentum-wise, being 6 days removed from their last contest, those two could not have gone differently late. And I think that we'll be on the right side taking Spencer Sanders and Oklahoma State.
All right, moving on down to good old Tennessee, Rocky Top. We got Kentucky coming in, facing the Volunteers, who are 12-point favorites. How are you feeling on that one?
It's going to take a Herculean effort from this Kentucky, especially. Will Levis has not eclipsed 230 yards passing in SEC play. He's going to have to if they keep this game within 32, if not 12. I just don't know. Chris Rodriguez is back. He missed some time early. I'm not quite sure why, but he's looked fine. 5.5 yards a carry in 3 games, but that's against, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Ole Miss, not exactly the class of the SEC, and he's up against it now. This, I think, is one of the more heralded quarterbacks in the country. I still think that if he's drafted in the top 10, that GM's getting fired within 2 years. As far as college goes Saturday, I'm just going to trust the offense again. I don't love that Tennessee is the most bet team. It seems like across the board with sports books and all that, because it is the biggest look-ahead spot maybe in the history of their program, because they've got the biggest game in 25 years next week in Athens. So if they were on the road, I would maybe think about taking Kentucky plus about 9 or 10 if this was flipped location-wise, but it's not. It's going to have 100,000 something people there. Since they'll be on the road next week, this is their chance to send them off with the win, and I think it'll be by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm going to be with you on this one too. I just don't see a script where Kentucky keeps up with them points wise. They might get a few stops. I don't know. Like you said, Levis hasn't thrown over 230 yards in SEC play, and Hendon Hooker, like, he's easily in the Heisman running right now. His stats are insane. Josh Heupel has them just a machine right now. Like you're saying, 12 is a lot of points, especially in a little rivalry game here. I do think having that UT Martin game in between Bama and this one kind of helped them get over that hump of like the hangover effect. And I know they have like a look in with Georgia next. So that 12's a little close for comfort, but I don't see Kentucky scoring the amount of points needed to cover. Now, if they force a lot of turnovers, maybe. But Tennessee is a high-powered offense that's going to put up 30-plus easily. So I'm going to go Tennessee minus 12 here too.
It's another big number. Like you mentioned, it would probably take turnover as a defensive score to really get Kentucky in this game and truly in it. The back door, the 2 TD spreads, going to be open all 60 minutes. But, hopefully, unlike the Florida game, Tennessee can close it out on defense at home.
So the last game of the college slate, we're going to move on down to Chapel Hill. We got UNC and the ACC's worst rush defense facing off against Pittsburgh, who's been kind of hit and miss. I mean, Pittsburgh, the dude ran for 6 touchdowns and like 366 yards against Virginia Tech. Shout out, screw VT, but also eat sheet Pitt. But I just think, for me personally, I think the script is going to be a little different for this. I think UNC might jump out on them a little fast. Drake May is really good. That UNC offense, I know, is pretty high-powered also, like we were talking about with Tennessee. So I don't think that they're going to be able to completely lean on the run game in this. And I don't trust Slovis to hold on to the ball and possess the ball enough. I think he turns it over 1 or 2 times and lets UNC take this at home. I think it's sitting at -3 right now, so that's where I'm going. And also, just to have a little shout out at the end, Pittsburgh should have lost to WVU. Eat shit Pitt. So what you got there?
Yeah, I mean, you might look at a recent result from a close win at Duke, and kind of, if this team's built for the spotlight, they've shined on themselves with their play so far, just the one loss. But I think that's an underrated Duke team that there's a lot of coastal buzz with them until they dropped that game. They just forced 8 turnovers in a 45-20 win at Miami last week in Duke. So, I mean, that's not the slouch we've come to recognize the last, who knows how long, decade that Cutcliffe's been there. But, I mean, this is pretty much the coastal right here. North Carolina wins it. They'd be up 3 games with 4 left. Now, there's math there if they lose 4 straight, but I don't think that happens. I don't think they lose this one either, and I think they win it by at least 3. So I'm going to take the points with the home team as well. I mean, I think that Israel is electric on the ground for Pitt, but if you're down 17-3, can you really just feed him 30 times again? I mean, I realize that works against Virginia Tech, who might very well be the worst team in the ACC. But they didn't. I mean, there were portions of that game where that wasn't decided, and he had, like you mentioned, 300-something yards and 6 touchdowns. So it's going to come down to, can Slovis beat Drake May? And in Chapel Hill, especially at night, this is their biggest home game of the year. I just don't think it happens. And so I'm going to take North Carolina. I think it's closer to double digits than a field goal. And I think they lock down the coastal with Charlotte on deck for them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with your the script of this game just does not fit how Pittsburgh would need it to be to win and to cover or to win in general for me. Like you said, if they force a couple of turnovers, if they get out to a lead early, then they can start pounding the ball with Israel. But I don't know. I don't foresee that. Obviously, we can always be wrong, but that's what we got for the college football slate. It's going to be a good one. This was probably one of the better slates in a while, honestly, that we've had for 5 full games. So
that's the 5 games are circled for us in college. We're going to stop here in a second, and then we'll hit start, and we'll be joined by Larry's brother Travis to tackle 5 more games on Sunday slate for NFL. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and if you're on the NFL as well, then keep listening on the other video because we'll get right in NFL.